Well, good day, everybody. You are not going to want to miss this episode of the Lifetime Training Podcast. As you know, I'm Jason Stella, and I'm your host. But today I am unbelievably grateful to have, one of the biggest influencers in the education in training industry, Mr. Gary Gray. Gary Gray is the founder of the Gray Institute and has influenced, I really can't think of a person that I've ever learned from on the main stage that hasn't mentioned Gary and hasn't been influenced by Gary. So today, welcome. And thank you so much for taking the time and joining us today.
Jason, it's really an honor. It's an honor not only to be able to connect again with you, because I admire all that you're doing, and we've always had a really special friendship, but just to connect with Lifetime and be a part of their training program. So thanks for this opportunity. No
problem. So, we're in this funny time in the industry, and the industry is changing, and people are switching jobs and maneuvering around. And I think we've got a huge influx of people getting into the industry. And because it is a perfect time, although we have a lot of things going on, we'll talk about that later, but we got a lot of things going on, but there's more people need to improve their health and wellness and their fitness now more than ever. Obviously with the COVID and the issues that can come and the predetermined issues that increase your risk. And one of the big things I'm also seeing is a huge shift in moving from just straight fitness to health. And that's what I know. And that's what I love about, your stuff is, hey, getting lean is important, but the bigger population wants to maybe have a 4-pack, but be able to move better. And no information is better than yours. So why don't you start out by just telling some of the audience, because some people might not have heard from you or of you yet, how did you get started and what's the Gray Institute all about?
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. I'll make it real brief. Obviously, I'm an old guy, and I've been fortunate to come alongside a lot of the people that you mentioned, and the kindness that they have in sharing the information. And of course, I share their information. And at the end of the day, it's hopefully we're in it to educate people, just to enhance the lives of our clients. I started out 45 years ago now as a physical therapist. Realized that was kind of limited. I became an athletic trainer, realized that was limited. Since then, I've taken 3 personal training certifications, which have helped me a lot. It's kind of interesting, the emphasis that a personal trainer has that we didn't have as a physical therapist or an athletic trainer. Became a strength coach. And so at the end of the day, somebody said, what the heck are you? Well, I'm an old guy that, just loves the miracle of the human body. And I would basically call myself a movement guy. I think everything boils down to movement. And like you said, movement is part of what being healthy is. If you're on your couch and you just can't move, you wouldn't call yourself healthy, even though you were lean and even though, you were mean. And, but if you can't move, that's kind of a common denominator. And I think you said it best, Jason. I think people are realizing, one of the positives of the COVID is there's a couple positives. I think, first of all, we know we're not in charge of anything. And second of all, people are really saying, you know what, this health thing's a big deal. And they're looking for guidance. Like you say, I can go and, jump on Instagram and Facebook and things, but even people are smart enough to know, boy, that's just being inundated by all kinds of stuff. Even I inundate it. So you can't even trust what I have to say. And so you need somebody who's trusted, who's dedicate themselves like a personal trainer, who says, I'm not here to make $1 zillion. I'm here to help you. And I'm here to help you get healthy. And we're going to look at everything. We're going to look at movement. We're going to look at diet. We're going to look at everything that will enhance your life. So it's exciting because at a time you'd think the personal training profession would kind of maybe start to fizzle a little bit. It's going to pick up and more people are going to be desiring the guidance of a really good personal trainer.
And what I love too is it's really, had a spike in the way that we can reach people now, like the way that we're doing this right now, the virtual side of things and being able to actually, assess people and actually work with people from everywhere, from every walk of life. It doesn't matter where you're at and what state. So that's awesome. One other thing, when we talk about health, if you look at the definition of health is not only physical, but it's mental and social. And one of the things that I am super, I admire from you is how you bring everything into this and really that mental and social side. So, between all the programs. So, one of the things I'd love for you to do is just quickly just outline, we're going to go deep into a couple of them, but outline, what is the curriculum? What is the education that you provide? And I can't forget to say that every person that I've met, that I've learned from, has also called you the father of function too. So I can't not throw that one in there as well.
That's again because I'm old. So
grandfather.
We're not using the phrase grandfather now. So yeah, we've been dedicated. We were fortunate 45 years ago to let people would let us share what we believe about how the body functions and how to get healthy and how to move better and how to rehab better. And we quickly realized we didn't know a lot. That was obvious. And as a result, we decided we would try to stick to the science. You hear that a lot now, don't you?
Yeah.
Are we listening to the science? And that's good, but you still have to interpret the science and you still have to understand where the science comes from. And so in the world of human movement and health and well-being, there's a lot of science out there that's gone on long before, we hit the earth. And so what we did is we formed a concept called applied functional science. You're not supposed to use the words of the phrase to define the phrase, but it's the science of functionally applying what the body does. So it's kind of like, oh, okay, gotcha. But what does that mean? And so what we realized is in a lot of our curriculum, and I'm going to pick mostly on my main profession as a physical therapist, we didn't learn a lot about function. We didn't learn about how you really walk and how you bend over in the garden and how you move so you have better posture and literally how you swing a golf club or how you just enjoy you have just a wonderful family, just going on the beach and being with your family and enjoying that. We didn't learn that. We learned, hey, if you get hurt, try to make this feel better and go from there. So we immediately looked at a lot of principles. And of course, one of the principles you just brought up that I am more convinced than ever, and I love the way you shared it, is that we as human beings are three-dimensional. We have a physical, we have what we call a mind part of ourselves, a mental part. And I like the word social. It's a little less intimidating because we could use social, we could use spiritual, we could use whatever, but it's the thing deep inside us who makes us us. Yep. You have, Jason, one of your gifts is you have a special spirit. So if I describe you to other people, I'll go, I don't, first of all, tell how good looking you are and how big and strong you are. I want to impact the person. And so I tell them about your heart and spirit. So that's you. That's what makes you special. But you're able to add on the fact that I'm healthy and therefore I can serve others. And so we look at things as if people haven't been introduced to us, just think everything's three-dimensional. Movement is three-dimensional. We as a human being are three-dimensional. The space we live in is three-dimensional. How we encourage people is three-dimensional. And just basically how we live our life is three-dimensional. So we were known back in the, strangely enough, late 70s as the 3D people. We would develop these things called matrices. So if you did something in one plane of motion, we'd say, and here's how to do it in the other plane of motion. And so we had these 3D matrices. And now we have 10 million matrices that we've developed based on the sagittal, frontal, and transverse plane. And strangely enough, it makes sense because that's as we as human beings move. But what's exciting about sharing not only with you, but your group of personal trainers, what drives them to want to serve others is their spirit. Their brain doesn't just wake up one day and go, you know what, I got this great idea. Or their body says, hey, why don't we just head on over there to one of the most beautiful fitness facilities in the world, Lifetime, and see if we can help some people. Down deep in their heart, they go, I want to serve somebody. I want to help somebody. Mm-hmm. And I want the feedback that gives me. And so there's a big part of that social, spiritual, emotional kind of part that I think is huge.
I love it. And, to expand and to give a little bit more context, I mean, there's the people that want to look better naked, right? And those are the people Sure. that is a good population. And I would say that we all want a bit of that mm-hmm. When we're in our 20s. And if we're serving 20s and 30s, 35s ish, in that range, it is about that. And you're going to do maybe some more traditional stuff, but then as the years grow, I mean, I'm a perfect testament it's about being able to move. It's about being overall healthy. I did a podcast earlier with Michelle Delcourt, and he says to say hello. And he said, when he talked with the NFL Combine people, he said, one of the things that all the strength coaches and they said, he goes, I'm going to steal it, and I think it's worth here, is the best ability is availability, is what they said.
I like
And
that.
the ability to actually move. And I think, as we move through, we can get people in better shape, but we've got to get them to be able to move and be less, pain-free, or as less pain as possible. And like I said, I think your stuff is great. So let's dive into, you've got several different programs out there. Let's start with the Granddaddy. We're not going to spend a ton of time there.
Sure.
And then we'll come down and dive deep into the other two. So the mentorship, or I forget, the Institute, the Gray Institute mentorship. Talk to us about that, the gift program.
You hit it right on the nose. It's the Gray Institute of Functional Transformation Institute. We call it GIFT. Number of reasons we call it a gift. We really believe the trainers and therapists and people who take it are really a gift to other people. Mm-hmm. And our goal is to enhance that gift. People who show up to GIFT, it's a 40-week mentorship program. Exciting news is next year, because of the COVID, we had to kind of scratch our head and go, wait a minute, how do we make sure that this is going to be what everybody wants? So we have an option of taking the whole thing online next year, or taking it online and coming for the hands-on 2 times. So that's pretty exciting. But people who show up to GIFT are already really successful. We've never had anybody show up to GIFT to go, yeah, I'm just not very good at personal training, and no one's getting better and no one's feeling better. Everybody shows up and goes, no, I'm really good at this.
Yeah.
I got a lot of great feedback, but because of that and the feedback I'm getting, I just want to be the best. Yeah. And so our goal is to just take whatever you're really great at and enhance that by coming alongside you for 40 weeks and hopefully sharing with you. But of course, what we selfishly have is we pick the brains of those who have taken GIFT. And so they've given us more than we've given them. So that's the big granddaddy of it all. If people from all over the world would say we haven't had anybody that hasn't said this, that it's life-changing.
For sure.
We not only get into the physical, we get into the mental, we get into spiritual, we get into every plane of motion. So that's the granddaddy. And then because of the COVID, we were lucky. We do a lot of online training, as you know. So we have 2 major certification. Those are called 3D maps and CAVs. We can talk a little more about that because, again, if I was a trainer, I'd really be interested in that. And then we just started some specialties. We'll be coming out with a specialty on the foot and ankle here in a little bit. We just did one on active aging. That's wonderful. Awesome. The female athlete and the female chain reaction and things that are specific to the beautiful female body.
Yep.
We have, of course, Lenny did his soft tissue transformation along with Brandy. And so we all of a sudden, as people learn this, they kind of go, man, I'd like to know a little more specifically about that. Of course, we have our world famous functional golf system specialty as well.
Yeah.
That people are just loving simply because it's based on the function of golf. So we start with the truth and kind of go from there. So a lot of opportunities. The other exciting thing that you've noticed too, and that's why you have this wonderful job, is trainers are probably a lot like me early on. We kind of realize we don't know everything, and they want to be significant to their clients, and they're quickly saying, I need to be educated. And that's why lifetime training is so significant, because you guys have committed to take care of your trainers and train them. That's why I would want to work for you, because when I get in front of somebody, the question I have to ask is, am I the best in the world doing this? Probably the answer should be yeah, because if not, send them to the person who is, so, but you just in your heart got to really say, am I learning at the same rate I'm asking my client to work out? In other words, if I'm asking them to put a little time into, watching their diet and move a little bit and train a little bit, am I asking the same of myself with my education? And the great trainers say, yeah, it's a never-ending process. So we're creating, hopefully, an environment where people can come to us and say, I want to know more about this miracle we call the human body. And I want to create environments that literally help my clients in ways that no one even thought possible based on the science of applied functional science.
Love it. And, you talk about truths a lot and in the grounding principles in 2 that I always go back to is the more you know, the more you realize you don't know,
Mm.
and be okay with that.
That's a cliche, but it's so true. It's
Yeah.
scary, especially
Yeah.
with the human body. You know,
That's it.
I think if you would have asked me 10 years ago, what percent of what you need to know about the human body do you know? And I would probably be cocky and say about 10%. And now I go, I'm lucky to be 3%.
Oh,
You
that's
know,
awesome.
it's
And that's
just,
you.
yeah. And that, well, that's all of us. We just,
Yeah. No, I get
how
it.
this thing does what it does. You just smiled beautifully. How'd that happen?
Yeah,
You know, it
exactly.
happened quick. You know, it's kind of like, wow, that's
Yeah.
pretty cool. Well, how does the body move, and how does it, you know, become pain free, and how does it enjoy life? How does it dance? You know,
Yeah.
so that's our passion. And so I appreciate being able to share that with you.
I love it. Love it. And, you know, the other one that I was saying too is, you know, having an open mind. I mean, obviously,
Mhm.
if you have a traditional strength training background, some of the stuff that is out there is different. It's a lot
Yeah.
different, and it will not question what you've thought. It's just it's another bolt on to have a bigger group of people that you can work with. I always say, for me, I always love the corrective side, because for me it was, I can help somebody get out of pain. Not that I'm treating their pain, but I can help them do things that will get them out of pain quicker than I can get them to lose 20 or 30 pounds. And then you mentioned golf. That was the bread and butter of the business that I got successful and I grew up with,
Right.
is just dealing with golfers. And it's such a great market. They can afford it. Usually they're a little bit out of their
They're crazy.
mind when it
Yeah,
comes to
we're
spending
nuts.
money. They love to gamble. So it's
Yeah.
a great
Oh, yeah.
demographic. So why don't we dive into the CAFS program, explain what does CAFS stand for, and what they can expect. And maybe if you can go into a couple examples of what they might learn there.
Sure. Yeah. Our two main certifications, as you just said, are CAVs and 3D maps. And what's interesting is we did everything here at Gray Institute, what my mama would call back-ass work. And what I mean by that is we started 45 years ago, this global course that was chain reaction. Chain reaction of what? Of the entire body. What does that mean? Well, when you move your hand, what happened to your foot? You know, so we got to know that for everything, for any training, for correctives, for golf. And that was kind of interesting. And then we kind of go, well, we got to be a little more specific than that. We got to kind of zero in. So then we started doing things where we said, well, if you're going to kind of dig deep into that, let's come up with this program that we've been doing now for 14 years called GIFT. So it's a deep dive into neurologically and myofascially and osseous, how the body moves. And then you put on that a heart in the person's body and you put a brain on top of them. And now what happens?
Yep.
And then we said, well, you know what? In order to create this function, we have to know what joints are doing. So we got to facilitate what we call local activation of the joints. In other words, if the hip goes through 3 planes of motion and I need to get those 6 motions occurring, what's the best way to do that so my client walks better and they just enjoy life more? So we developed CAFS, because CAFS is a local way to enhance the global. There's a biomechanist will say you have to appreciate the whole and the parts and the parts and the whole. Mm-hmm. Makes sense to me. Problem is I never appreciated the whole or the parts. I just didn't know. So we then developed CAFS to really go at the parts. And then finally, Eureka happened, where we were able to develop a thing called 3D maps. Now that's the whole. Mm-hmm. And the way we developed it is, first of all, as you said, Jason, and again, this is why you've been so successful, is we cling on to truths first. And then from the truths, we have strategies. And from the strategies, then we developed a technique. We know a bunch of groups, if they did a movement assessment, we'd say, well, where did you get those movements from? They say, well, they're traditional. They've been out there for 20 or 30 years. And so we just packed them up and put them in a bag, and we called it a movement assessment. We didn't do that. We said, first of all, what does the movement assessment have to be? What criteria does it have to have? And once we listed the criteria, the first thing we said is, I don't think we can do that. That's almost impossible to be able to achieve all those goals. And then a few years ago, it was like, whoa, I think we're onto something here. And you'll see, especially in the very near future, how that's going to evolve into something that's going to empower all of us, personal trainers, where if our goal is human movement, and you're an engineer, and you would say to me, so what do you want to know? And I go, well, I want to know the mobility of every joint, and I want to know the stability. And the engineer would go, give me different terms. Well, I need to know the flexibility and the strength. Okay. But then the engineer would say, in what context? And I'd go, what do you mean by that? Well, do you want to know how well they do laying down? Or do you want to know how they're doing up walking around? I go, well, 99% of them want to walk around. So I have to, because the engineer would say it's totally different. As soon as you lay somebody down, you change the ball game. So you changes the stresses and everything. And so then the engineer says, well, how many critical joints are there in the body that you would need? And I'd say, how do you define critical? Well, something that influences another part. I mean, your finger's very critical, but I can have a dysfunction of my finger and I can still walk pretty good. Okay. But if I have a dysfunction of a critical joint, then it's going to influence everything. And so we said, well, interesting enough, there's 11 critical joints. And he says, now do all of them move in 3 planes of motion? And we'd say to the engineer, yeah. He goes, well, you got your hands full, buddy, because you have to be able to assess and evaluate 66 motions. How long is the client going to be there? More than a week? And I said, no, we have to do that in 5 minutes. Yeah. And they go, well, I'm not sure you're going to be able to do it. Well, we did it with 6 movements.
That's awesome.
We now know we can look at all 66 motions. And what is really critical about how Gray Institute does things compared to most other people is we're not looking for failures. We're not looking for you're supposed to get a 30, but you only got a 22, na. Or you're supposed to have a green light, but you got a yellow light, or a red light. Yeah. That tells us nothing. Okay. Yeah. What we're looking for is successes, because as you knew as you did your career, the corrective, if you looked at them and say, man, if we just build upon that success and do that, when you swing that club, your low back pain is going to go away. And they did. And the eyes lit up and go, oh, what'd you do? And you go, well, I didn't pick on what you can't do. Yeah. I took advantage of what you can do. That's a real strong behavioral principle. So our 2 main certifications that a lot of people who just want to be able to feel comfortable evaluating somebody, and I don't know how you develop a program without a good evaluation. No one's told me that yet. I've had some people say, no, I don't need a good assessment. I start my programming, I scratch my head and go, how, and I don't want to go to somebody like that. I don't want them to treat me like somebody else. I want them to evaluate me, find my giftedness, ask me what I really want to do, and build a program based on my desires, and feel comfortable in doing it. So that's really what 3D maps and calves is all about.
Got it. So, you've got some stuff behind you that I would love to just kind of look at. You've got different movements and again, would you mind just kind of explaining what's going on a little bit, just to give them some tangible kind of, hey, this is what we do in maps, or this is what we do in calves.
No, I appreciate you asking that, because that's really I always call it the wisdom and the beauty, and it's not our wisdom, it's not our beauty. It's the wisdom and the beauty of understanding movement that we can accomplish that. The movements are so significant that literally the 6 movements that you see on our wall back there are the 6 movements of 3D maps.
Got it.
And so, again, what we did first of all, which when we first did it, we can't come up with this. We said, we have to make this so the assessment is purely functional. And as you know, in our industry, what is that? If anybody has messed that term up, it's been me. Yeah. For 45 years, I think I've blotched that term so much, but it really is, what do you want to be able to do with your beautiful human body, mind, and spirit? Okay. That's your function. So, but it's even deeper than that, because if you say, well, I'm going to do something functional for walking, and you lay me down and lift my leg up, I'm sorry, there's too big of a gap there. Doesn't mean that laying somebody down, lifting their leg up is wrong. I'm just saying it's not functional for walking or for just about anything else. And so we went through a criteria that it had to be, all 3 dimensions had to be represented. Well, of course, we move in 3D, so that makes sense. All 66 motions have to be represented. We have to look at not only mobility, but stability. And it's like, wow, how in the world do you do that in such a short period of time? So if you don't mind, I'll take you through a couple just quickies, and everybody, if they haven't seen this before,
I love it.
It's kind of the light goes on a little bit, at least it did for me. Sometimes my light gets dim, but it's kind of fun to have it kind of pop back on.
No,
so
this
I'm
is
gonna
perfect.
Back, and I'll see if you can let me know if you can see me okay. You see me all right there?
Yeah, that's perfect.
Okay. So just something as simple as walking. Walking's pretty functional. When I walk and I take a step forward, the question we need to ask ourselves is what criteria, what does my body need to effectively do that? Well, if we went to all 11 critical joints, they would tell us. But let's go to something simple. Let's just go to our hip. So the hip would say, well, as soon as I enter into the ground, I go through this motion we call flexion in the sagittal plane. I go through this motion we call adduction in the frontal plane. And I go through this motion that we call a little bit of internal rotation in the transverse plane. I go, okay, that's what science tells us. We didn't make that up. That's big. But then it says, in order to propel yourself forward, when the other leg comes forward, now I have to have huge extension out of the hip. I not go to the side here, I go to the side here, so I need abduction in the frontal plane, and I need even more internal rotation. Mm-hmm. So if somebody just comes to you and says, you know, I just want to enjoy more, I just want to walk better, at the minimum, you have to have an assessment technique in the standing position to assess the mobility and the stability of all 6 motions of the hip. At the minimum, that's just kind of like bare minimum requirement. Yep. Where most of us would say, crap, never learned that one. You know, even as a therapist, no one taught me that. And I'm supposed to get people walking better after a total knee. And it's my job. And I don't even know what criteria walking is. So if we kind of together, and if somebody's watching this and they got the time or the space and they just kind of want to get up with me and do this, they could develop 3D maps on their own. What's intriguing about what we do is it's not smart at all. In other words, if you really go down and find out what the gray suit does, we're dumber than rocks, okay? The only thing we'll take credit for is that we follow the truth. So if motion is 3D, that's a truth. Strategically, I should assess in 3D. And then what should that look like? Well, probably should do everything in 3D. Well, duh, okay, that wasn't that hard. Yeah. So if I do a lifting matrix, I'm going to go straight up, but I'm going to go forward, I'm going to go back, I'm going to go side, the other side, I'm going to open up transverse plane. So I got all 6 motions. My shoulder goes, it's about time you did everything I do. Okay, you got the bases covered. Wow. So I'm looking at the hip and I go, well, if I need to know how much extension I need, what's the most functional way to do that? And then the answer would be the same way walking does it. Just let the other leg go forward and then let it come back. And most people go, wait, but that's a lunge. Bingo. Okay, so if I did a right-sided anterior lunge and kept going out as far as I can, pretty soon you can't see it, but my heel will come up. So if you sense that, and the question is, wonder what made my heel come up? You got to the end range of extension. So then we said, wait a minute, I want to make sure if the goal is, as the engineer said, I have to look at all the mobility, what else would I add to that to guarantee that I'm looking at the mobility of the hip and the sagittal plane and extension? And the answer would be, well, let's use another authentic driver. Let's use the hands. So now if I just stood here and I take my hands and go, which way would you take your hands to get the hips to extend? That's really easy. Take them up and back. Automatically my hips extend. So you go, wait a minute, this is pretty cool. Here's what I think I'm going to do. I'm going to do an anterior lunge while I'm taking my hands up and back. That's that one picture right over there. And I'm going to assess, and right now I'm just going to look at your hip. How much functional hip extension do you have with an authentic driver of the other foot and the hands? And we even then add the eyes, the 3 most authentic drivers in the body. And then we go, whoa, that was pretty easy. I wonder if the other 5 motions of the hip are that easy. Yes, they are. So I need to look at flexion. What causes flexion? The opposite of what just caused the extension. Oh, this is going to get easier by the day. So now all I have to do is say, well, take my foot back into a posterior lunge, and boom, now I'm looking at this all-powerful lengthening of the butt. But just to guarantee that I'm going to get as much flexion as my body possibly can have, I'm going to take my hands down and back, and now we see even more hip flexion. But if I combine them both and just simply say to my client, just lunge back and reach back as far as you can, they will show me how much flexion they have through mobility. And then you go, I bet he's going to use that same strategy in the frontal plane. Yep. So hip abduction, same side lateral, take the hands the opposite. Look at that's as much abduction as this hip can give me.
So Gary, give me one second. So two things. I'm gonna put the slideshow up so you can hopefully see my screen.
Oh, beautiful.
This
will help us even more.
Do you see the?
I see it. Yep.
Yep. So perfect.
So what I just did is I just went through the anterior chain and the posterior chain. If you go down to the next two, you're going to see the two frontal plane chains. So we're just looking at the hip right now. Don't worry about the other motions. And so the hip is, of course, in the same side lateral going through maximal abduction, not abduction as you learned it on a table, which means absolutely nothing. Yeah. Abduction as what happens when you are reaching for a ground ball, or what your son's doing when he's trying to track somebody down defensively, or what I did this morning when I dropped something on the floor. I just went over, reached sideways, and I had to abduct my hip. The next chain is adduction. So now you got maximal adduction. I have to have that just to walk, let alone all the other things I want to do. And then the all-important transverse plane that most people just forget about. It's the most important chain, and it's the most important motion in the human body. We think we do this a lot because that's what our eyes see. But if you get up high on a scaffold and watch somebody walk around, you're going to find out we twist and shout. And so we have internal and external rotation of the hip. So just with these 6 movements, I'm a personal trainer. I'm going, man, if I just spent time on empowering their hips, I could almost take care of them for a lifetime, pun intended. Yeah. And so it's like, wow. But then the next question would be, I see the mobility, Gary, but I thought you said something about strength and stability. Now what do I got to do? Do I have to lay somebody down and do a manual muscle test, or I have to have muscle activation, or do I have to have a dynamometer? No, we're going to do functional. We're going to do functional assessment. So somebody might have really good hip flexion, but now I want to know, can they handle that hip flexion?
Yep. And Gary, one thing too, you've said it a couple of times, and I want, hopefully people can follow it. You've used the word drivers. And
very good.
I know what you mean, but explain that a little bit with, what the drivers are and how that impacts what you're doing too.
I appreciate you bringing that up, because a driver is what we study all the time. A driver is what causes motion. So you, a while back, were driven to reassess your nutritional plan, and I witnessed personally a transformation of your body, okay? Something drove you to do that. That's an emotional driver, okay? Also a mental driver, because mentally you knew this is going to help me get healthier. Yep. And I'm going to be able to do more for my family and more for my job. That's great. Physical drivers, the drivers that people keep forgetting about that we have to take into consideration is gravity. It's a driver. Ground reaction force is a driver. And then, of course, Newton would say also that as we're moving, mass and momentum is a driver. And so our body is driven by external forces. Internally, we're driven by what we want to do. So I don't basically, like we'll use golf, for example. I don't go, well, I have to activate this, I have to move this, I have to move that. I go ball, club, hit ball. That's all I do. And my body automatically uses my hands and drives it to this motion that loads all the muscles. And if I can do it well and I explode out of it, I actually use a driver with my hands as a driver in order to make the ball go. So authentic drivers that personal trainers should use all the time are the client's feet, the client's hands, and the client's eyes, because that's the driver they use when they go home. The more authentic you can make your training, you know this, the more they're going to love it, the more they're going to stay with you. The less authentic, the more machine oriented, the more like they're sitting there and doing something and you can just see it in their eyes. I don't normally do this. My body doesn't recognize this. This isn't an authentic driver. Why are you making me do this? The answer might be, I don't know. This is what on the program. They told me to take you through all these machine exercises, and I can't tell you why I'm doing it. And so interestingly enough, we take away a driver to find out the strength. So I'm doing this posterior lunge with a posterior reach, but now all I do is tell my client, great job. Go ahead and reach back with just toe touch. So what I'm doing right now, I'll try to get this just a little lower so you can see a little more of what's happening down at the floor, is what I'm doing now is I'm doing the lunge, but I'm toe touching my right foot. So now this has to do a lot more work. And then I go, whoa, good job, Jason. Do me a favor. Can you reach back there and not touch? And now I get to see, hey, you had about 98 degrees of flexion with stability, and now you're able to control about 80 degrees. That's really good, buddy. But, if you want to be a little more powerful in what you want to do, we're going to just increase that a little bit. We're going to tweak that up. And so each of the mobility chains are a stability change when you take away stability. So I can get functional stability to occur when I take away stability from the body. And so it's when you put all those together, you go, this is great. Because I could literally come up with a million different ways to tweak that to help this person. And all I'm going to hear is, if I'm the personal trainers, man, I don't know what we did last week in our training, but all I noticed is when I was picking stuff up in the house, it was easier. I noticed I could pick up my granddaughter a lot easier. I noticed I was walking better, and I noticed I could hit the ball better, and I noticed you enhanced my entire life. What did you do? Yeah. And the answer would be, well, I studied how the body really does what it does authentically, because that's what you want and that's what you need. And I used authentic drivers to enhance you. And you were nice enough to show me what you can do when you did 3D maps. I just took advantage of that. And I just took your body and then said, great job, body. Let's just do a lot more. And all of a sudden the client goes, now we're on to something. So that's
awesome. You know, there's two things I want to really highlight there too is, you know, the amount of results that you can get in a fairly short period of time utilizing this. And when I say results, this is an emotion. We always talk, you hear people talk about, you know, being emotionally attached and how that creates, you know, there's the thought feeling cycle. And if you have an experience and you attach a strong emotional feeling to it, that's what ingrains it into the body. And when they do that, when they can move and feel better quickly, that's a client that's either going to stay with you for a long time or definitely be the Pied Piper who's going to be, you know, sending your name out to the masses. And that's just phenomenal for your each individual trainer's personal brand, as well as it expands beyond that. So that's fantastic. And, you know, one of the things that it brought up, I used to teach, and this may have been a quote that came from you, but it was above the chain, below the chain, or another plane. And I had said, you know, I used to teach about compensation. And if you just watch, all compensation will occur either above the chain, the particular kinetic chain checkpoint, if you want to call it that, or into another plane. And I would say the more you understand that, and you understand pronation and supination throughout the body, and you understand the planes of motion, the way that they were intended, not, oh, this is the sagittal plane, you know, then it just opens up what you see, which is why you can pick on somebody. You can, not when I say pick on them, you can look at somebody and go, okay, I see what's going on right there. It's got to be one of the two. And it just simplifies it. I didn't
say it exactly that way, but you said it better. And let me tell you why you said it better. So let's stay with the hip, for example.
Yep.
It's rare that somebody comes in here and doesn't have a gunky front hip. Why? What we're doing right now, gravity, the fact that we don't know how to train our front hip three-dimensionally. So if some people know how to stretch maybe the iliopsoas one-dimensionally, but they don't know how to get the capsule in the other two dimensions. And our strategy is kind of in a nutshell exactly what you just said, better than what we said it. In order to make that hip successful in the sagittal plane, we'll go up the chain. So we'll find some segments up the chain that will feed that. We'll go down the chain. We'll find, of course, the foot and the knee to feed that. But then we'll go into another plane. Because if I can successfully, and you can sense it yourself, if I can successfully, let's say my frontal plane chain is pretty good, and my sagittal is gunky like most of us. Well, I'm going to do what Jason just said. I'm going to go in another plane. So I'm going to do another plane here, and I'm going to tweak maybe a little closer to that. I'm just going to do some things immediately because it's the same tissue, the same muscles, the same capsule, the same nerves that are being stimulated. All of a sudden now when I go back to the anterior chain, your eyes light up and go, wait a minute, how in the world did you just get me to do that better when we didn't do that? And I'd say, well, I listened to this guy by the name of Jason, and he gave me this incredible strategy that works on everything, by the way, because we are a chain reaction. We're a kinetic chain. If you look at a rusty part of a chain and say, what do you want? The chain will say, go up the chain, go down the chain, or make me go in another plane, but don't beat me up, you know, because I'm rusty. I'm going to get beat up. So good job.
Easiest, awesome. I always say that too. And when I used to speak to it, I would say, just imagine somebody with a knee, if they had a knee brace or a knee cast, if you're in a cast, like when they're walking, I don't have much room right now, but when they're walking, the knee can't flex or extend. It can't move. That's why it's there. And so all of a sudden now you're going to see this extra motion in the frontal plane in the hip because it's going to laterally shift to get the leg to come through. And that's just how the body is. And again,
Yes.
your stuff feeds right into it. So
we have a saying, when we rehab the knee, we ignore the knee. And the knee would go, that's very smart of you. Why are you doing that? Because we'd say, because you're a dumb joint.
Yeah.
You are totally dominated by the foot and hip.
Yeah.
And so our big rocks, of course, in 3D maps are the foot, hip, and thoracic spine.
Yep.
And so if somebody says, well, how do you train and condition somebody to try to limit an ACL problem? I should totally ignore the knee.
Yeah.
I look at their core. I look at their other hips. I look at their feet. I look at everything that would help control the three-dimensionality of what that knee needs to do to protect the ACL. And all of a sudden, biomechanically, the good news is the things that we've been teaching for 45 years, people are finally going, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And the research has proven it. And the reason research has proven is because we didn't make the crap up. Yeah. It was sitting right in front of us all the time 45 years ago. And so it's kind of exciting. And that's why I would be more than thrilled to be a personal trainer right now, especially in an organization like Lifetime, who cares about me, cares about the clients, and cares about my education. There's so much room to grow, and there's so many good things to do. But if I'm going to add a big but as an old guy, and I do have a big but as an old guy, but this is another kind of a but, continuously educate yourself.
Yeah.
Find out, because that's a big, big responsibility you have with that person coming in and saying, wow, help me. I'm in pain.
The other thing too, it brings up is, again, I'll bring it to a quote, is that when the student's ready, the teacher will appear. And it's, I can't tell you how many times early on when I bought every book, I'm going to go buy, Travell and Simmis's myofascials, or I'm going to, which is therapeutic exercise for segmental spinal stabilization and low back pain, the whole TDA thing. And I remember reading it the first time going, okay, I'm going to plop that down and set it down. And then all of a sudden, 10 years later, I go back and I'm like, wait a minute, it said that? Yeah. I don't remember it saying that. Like, how did I miss that? And it's just, your awareness, obviously, when you're learning, and your knowledge at that particular time to be able to interpret it is huge. So, and I think, that could be a great analogy of what CAFs and MAPs actually helps you do to get to the actual the mentorship and the gift program. Is it will probably speed, you go through those two. Speed your understanding and knowledge exponentially into the other one. So we get MAPS. So the MAPS is more of the movement assessment, and you said it could be done within about 5 minutes.
Yes. When we see trainers who have done it a few times, and what's fun about it is, because it does what it biomechanically, you can send it to a biomechanist and say, are they really getting all those 66 motions? And the answer is yes. Yeah. And so a lot of personal trainers will start out just using it as a warm-up. Yeah. So we caught on to that when we had the privilege of training our U.S. Navy SEALs. The hard part about training a U.S. Navy SEAL is I got to figure out what you're going to do today. And the answer is yes. And so which of your joints need to be ready to go? Yes. Yes. Which of your proprioceptors need to be turned on? Yes. How many muscles do you need to be activated? All of them. And how quick do you want that done? Probably less than a minute. I ain't got a lot of time when I wake up on this rock to, get out my yoga mat. Yeah. And so we go, okay, what if we showed you this? We showed them 3D maps. Immediately you go, this is amazing. I'm ready to run. I'm ready to punch. I'm ready to throw. I'm ready to do whatever I need to do because I just went through. So a lot of personal trainers will use it, first of all, as a warm-up. And as the client gets pretty good at it, then they go, you know what? Today I'm going to watch you specifically and ask you to do a maximal lunge and a maximal reach to really get an idea how good you're doing. Because by the way, Sally, you're doing great. Yeah. But I want to know how to build your program. And your body's going to tell me. This sheet of paper is not going to tell me. This protocol is not going to tell me. This whatever performance program that somebody outlined for somebody, it wasn't you, Sally, by the way, is not going to tell me. Your body's going to tell me what you and I want to do together. And so within 5 minutes, it's like, wow, you know what? I just didn't know you were going to move in the frontal plane that well. Yeah. And we're going to take advantage of that frontal plane to take advantage of that little bit of that thoracic kyphosis. That's a sagittal plane problem, but Jason said, go in another plane. So now if I go in another plane, all of a sudden that creates the reaction I need to get better posture. I'll tell Sally, this is amazing. When you left here on Friday, you still were kind of slumpy, but here you are on Wednesday and you already look much better. What have you been doing? Well, I've been doing those side-to-side lunges like you told me, but I was adding those rotational reaches. So I'm using the frontal plane. She's not going to say this, but biomechanically, here's what her body would say. We followed what Jason said. We did a frontal plane lunge and a transverse plane reach that facilitated a subconscious reaction of the sagittal plane of the thoracic spine, and now I stand taller. Whoa, that's good. That's what we're after. And some people go, well, that sounds like magic. It sounds like a carnival trick. No, it's just good old-fashioned biomechanics that have been out there for years that we take advantage of. But so good trainers can do it quick. Most trainers do a little bit of assessment every session. Yeah, the good ones. They kind of go, where are we at today? Wow, and they use it. We use 3D maps mostly to engage the client. We'll show them that we're listening because this is all functional. So it doesn't matter what you do. We got you. We do it to empower them. They immediately go, wait a minute, I can also do this at home, and I can do this, and this is important. But the most important reason we do 3D maps is to encourage the client. Yep. Because as you said, the emotional link of encouragement is the most powerful link in the human body. You can call it love, you can call it whatever you want. But when you kind of walk into the house and you look at your wife and go, sweetie, you look just great today. And wow, you did all that today. I really appreciate that. That encouragement is 10 times, more gold than if you brought her gold. Yeah. Yeah. So,
and to just, I have to say, because the PowerPoint that you sent me that I showed it wasn't 3D maps. It was the power of encouragement.
Exactly.
And I think something that, hit home with me, I went to a 4-day virtual seminar about a month or so ago. And what they talked about is progress, and how much progress is what creates your ability to continue to go forward. So if you're always focusing on the end goal and you're not looking at the progress, and everything that you've said here is about that. It's about what can you do today, and then what can I open up? And if you can't do that today, what we didn't get into, what I think we should spend a couple minutes just talking about, is that what's awesome is, hey, I can't do that today. That doesn't feel good today. So let's try and do some of this stuff. And if you don't, then that's fine. We're just not going to move in exactly that same plane. We're going to tweak it. And I think you came up with that term as it relates to training, and tweak it. And instead of stepping completely straight out at this distance, I'm going to go a little bit less and maybe step a little bit to the right. And now I've got that motion. There's no pain. And now I could do my lunge. And they're like, oh my God.
Imagine me being your client and I say, that bothers me a little today. Hey, no problem. I appreciate you sharing that with me. And then we use your wisdom. Hey, do me a favor. Let's step a little more lateral. Okay. And then just reach a little bit. How's that? That feels pretty good. Wow. I'm proud of you. That's great. That's progress. You're making progress in that plane. That's really going to help you here. But immediately as the client, here's what I hear. You're listening to me. I told you that hurt a little bit, instead of you saying, well, that's going to hurt a little bit, but do it anyway, or suck it up, or, let's go through the plane of pain. We have with 3D maps, it comes with the performance system that teaches you, and this will sound daunting, 10,000 other movements to add to your 3D maps. Yeah. And then it teaches you, as you said, tweakology, that I can now turn it into a zillion more. I know I did a somebody conned me into doing one of these Facebook live thingamabobbers, so I get, you're live. And so I did one where I promised the viewers that they learn 1 million ways to do a jumping jack in less than an hour. But as we went through all the tweaks, I had to admit to them I lied. We ended up teaching them 1.4 million ways. Well, if I'm a personal trainer and I can take one simple movement called a jumping jack, and I have the power to create 1.4 million movements from just that one movement, now I have the world at my disposal. And that's what you need if you want to be a functional trainer, because guess what? Function involves the entire world of human movement. So I love the way you put that.
Yeah, and it's so important, is because so often we do these huge progressions, and traditionally it's in weight and load, and so when you're able to understand the movement side of it, and how you have to adjust load. I always used to teach it. There's the strength principles, traditional, and then there's the
Right.
functional principles. And those two
Right.
things are separate, and they move in together. But you're not going to load traditional strength the way that you're going to load certain function things.
Correct.
But at the end of the day, what I think we're talking about too is these smaller progressions or smaller regressions that allow you to get success, encourage the client, have them feel successful, make them feel better, move better. And then you've got more options, really an unlimited number of options.
Yeah. What's fun is because I am an old guy, I get a lot of personal trainers who will call me or email me and just say, I want to be better at this. And one was complaining because what he said is, I work at a big box gym and I get people started and 4 or 5 sessions later, they quit. And I said, well, first of all, how are you assessing them? And of course it was very traditional. And then I said, well, second of all, when you reassess them every time and they improve, they have these little hits of success. How do you award them with that? Well, I don't do that. Well, okay, that's okay. So we have a couple things we can work on right now.
Mm-hmm.
I said, I know people say they want to move better, but if you give them the choice between moving better and being loved by somebody and being encouraged by somebody, they'll pick the encouragement every time. However, great trainers do both.
Yes.
Great trainers get you to move better, but they just beat you up with encouragement. I've never yet had a client go, back off, Gary, too much encouragement. Yeah. Now, I've blown smoke up people's butt before, and I've given what I would call non-authentic encouragement, being a rah-rah. Yeah. I try not to do that now, but that was one of my big mistakes I made early on in my career because somebody said you should encourage people. But you said it perfectly there, Jason. The more I know about human movement and what you can do, and then the small tweaks where now you do better, I don't have to fake the encouragement. I go, and plus, guess what? They don't even have to be told. They just saw it. They just felt it. They just saw their foot go farther. They just reached farther than they ever reached before. They just got back from the range where the ball went further with their 7-iron. You don't have to convince them. All you got to do is say, I'm proud of you. Just in whatever way you want. You just got to keep looking at your client in the eye and saying, I am proud of you.
That's awesome. That's so fantastic. I got one more question, and then I want to do just a quick recap of where people can go to find things, and we can
appreciate that.
But we've talked a lot about we talked about it in the front, just where the industry is and where it's going or where it has to go now. And you mentioned a couple of things, but anything else that you would add from what you've seen, both all the way through from I still remember being in Adrian when we met. And you had just worked with Kirk Cousins, and I don't know if you're still working with him. Obviously, a lot of Minnesota folks on this call, but I know that you worked with him. And I don't know why that came up. I just totally remember that and how successful he's now being able to do, given the encouragement compared to where he was at. But at the end of the day, where do you see on this big spectrum of high level down to general population of where we're going, and how also can the things that you're teaching help people?
That's the question. As you know, just to take a look at someone out, and I don't mean to put everybody in the same category, but you got some big box fitness studios, you got some medium size, you got your mom and pop shops, and some of the word on the street is, of course, now that I can't show up to the health club, or now not as many people are showing up, and of course, not as many personal training sessions, that, oh my goodness, let's panic and, shut the doors or, lay everybody off. And, and there's some wisdom. I mean, if you got $1 billion company and, you're bleeding a little bit, you got to put a tourniquet on for a little bit. But then when you take the tourniquet off, and you start doing some surgery, you got to ask what has this particular season of life taught us all. And you again started it out. Health is really important to us. Mm-hmm. So if we can prove to the public that we're going to help you with your health, we're going to understand more about how the human body functions. We're going to know more about nutrition. We're going to know more about correctives. We're going to know more about that than anybody else in the world. And we're going to give you a reason to, maybe with or without a mask, we don't care, come on in and see us. Mm-hmm. If I had a big box, I would come up with a really big reason why I'd want you to come. And then I would come up with the best telemedicine model in the world, so I could keep encouraging you when you weren't there, but giving you other opportunities to come. We call that independently dependent. In other words, we all want our patients and clients to become independent of us, but selfishly, I want them to be a little dependent on me.
Yeah.
In other words, I want them to get so much better. I have a client who stopped doing triathlons, and the only reason I'm thinking of this now is he just emailed me this morning. Extremely thrilled because we just did a telemedicine of 3D maps, easy to see where his successes were, real easy to see where his limitations were, stud muffin of a triathlete kind of guy, but can't run because of significant arthritis in his low back, really common. So we said, well, let's ask ourselves, first of all, what caused the arthritis? Your back didn't do it. There are other segments, as Jason would say, that are beating that up. So let's go after those, strangely enough, in a different plane of motion. And let's start sneaking at your back, going above and below, and see what happens. And literally less than 3 weeks, he's running 3 miles, where, as I explained to him in our last telemedicine, running now is becoming the cure, not the cause. So we would call that a causative cure. You go to a doctor with a plantar fasciitis and say, hey, doc, this hurts when I run. Hey, don't run, and give me your $150 as you walk out the door. That's not what people want. Yeah. They want encouragement. They want engagement. They want empowerment. They want to be loved. They want somebody who they know has been taking this seriously, has studied it. They want to be put in environments where they can get better. They want to see these small hits of success. And they, believe it or not, but we all know that's even more needed now than it was even 6 months ago. So now's the time for the cream to rise. Now's the time for the Lifetimes of the world saying, man, if we can come up with a way to get outside our walls and be significant and make some impact to everybody, the highfalutin quarterbacks are going to get taken care of one way or the other. If we can't help them, they'll go somewhere else. They got enough money. But my next door neighbor stuck with me.
Yeah.
And your next door neighbor stuck with you all. So I think if done right, our profession is going to take off like crazy because people will finally realize what we have to offer. Now, if we show up and we don't really do a good assessment and we just take them through a protocol that everybody else is going through, they'll smell that. Like the one trainer says, after 4 or 5 sessions, they were gone.
They're gone.
Well, they smell it quick. So I'm excited about where our profession is going to go. And I think people listening to this, they should be extremely excited. There's all kinds of huge opportunities. And what is a blessing, I think, is a company as big and strong and as impressive as Lifetime, just knowing how well they're taking care of their people. And they take it seriously. So you guys should be very proud of what you're doing.
Thank you. And there's more to come on what we're going to be doing there too. So, and this is just one of those things. So I can't thank you enough. So to recap, there's the 3 that will focus. We've got the CAFS program, which is roughly about how much money. I know that sometimes we work together and we could figure out what that is, but
I think 3D maps online is in the 380, 390 range. It's 11 hours, 10 and a half hours of, and when we say online, it's not a bunch of forms online, it's high-end video. When people take our courses, they go, whoa.
And you have your own studio too, just so that people know you have your own video studio.
That's our job, to make sure it's quality. Cabs is, I think, about $100 more. But what I always ask people, I go, man, just invest in yourself.
Yeah.
Be selfish for a little bit. Mm-hmm. Just really, because your selfishness will end up allowing you to be selfless.
Yes.
Just what you tell kids, man, the reason you perspire is so you can inspire. The reason you get healthy is not so that, you can run faster than the other kid, is that you can maybe help that kid up.
Yeah.
And help him at a time when he or she's down. So it's really low cost for what you get.
Yeah.
It's a big deal. So,
and it's done. It's self-paced. Those 2 courses are self-paced. They're, like I said, they're online. And you could get that. Your website is what?
grayinstitute.com.
Okay.
The other fun thing we're going to do this year is we are going to do a virtual 3D maps.
Okay.
So I do pretty good with online stuff. Yeah. But I do a little better when somebody's interacting live with me. Mm-hmm. So you could have pre-recorded some questions and thrown it at me. That wouldn't have been much fun. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Because your wisdom came through in this podcast, not just you asking questions. So there was, if people listen to this, they would go, it sounds like they sing in the same choir.
Yep.
what we do. Okay. So people like that. So, and we're also going to do our first time ever, we've done a course called Chain Reaction, which is the foundation of the biomechanics of everything. We've done that for 32 years now. It's the most successful movement seminar in the industry. We're going to do a 2-day virtual. So that's on grayinstitute.com. So,
perfect. And I'll get that stuff posted up in here.
Yeah, I appreciate that because, and again, that's, it's propaganda, but my name's on it. And so it better be right. I'm going to die soon. I'm not, we're all going to die soon. I know that's just when I was 20, I didn't think about that much. Now that I'm, my late 60s, the chances of me dying are low, so I just need to make sure that what we're doing is right and for the right reason. I'm not telling you that we're not interested in our ego, and I'm not telling you that we're not selfish, and I'm not telling you, I mean, we have to guard against it all the time. I have to kind of fight my false self all the time, who I pretend to be. But at the end of the day, when people see what we did, they go, I get it. This makes sense. We appreciate what you're doing for us. You're making me successful. I now become the hero to my client. And that's what it's all about. We want to make that trainer the hero to the client.
I love it. Love it. So, again, thank you so much for your time. Again, everybody out there, I can't even explain it, how much influence Gary has had on any of the major strength coaches, you name it. They've learned from him and they're moving forward, and I can't help you enough. And to be able to get introduced to this information and be able to take advantage of it is a blessing, especially where we're sitting right now. So take this time to get out, look into continuing your education so that you can pass that information down to your clients. They will see it. They will feel it. But again, Gary, any last words that you have? I just can't thank you enough, man.
Yeah, I want to say this to you, and I want to say this to trainers who are taking the time to listen to this and are considering to enhancing their education. So you got to listen real careful. You ready? You got to listen very carefully. And I just said to you with a powerful way, I didn't use words. Words can flippantly come out. But through sign language, I just simply said to you, Jason, which I really am, and to everybody listening, I am proud of you. So you should be really proud of what you guys are doing.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it, Gary.
Thank you, buddy.
Have a great day.
Hey, you too. Thank you for this time.